Today, we are here to learn, share, and be together. I'd like to take a moment to welcome to our session Laura Fogel and Carrie Brown Parker from the College of Education at NC State University. Laura is the Assistant Director to Metric, or Media and Education Technology Resource Center, and Carrie is the Director of Metric. They are going to be sharing with us quite a bit of information about Google Jamboards, and we are excited to hear from them today in our bite-sized PD series. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Laura and Carrie, and if you have questions again, please pop them in the chat throughout. Welcome, Laura and Carrie.
Thanks, Emmy. Thanks for that great introduction and for coordinating these sessions. They're so useful, I think, for our practicing teachers, and we're glad to see everybody here today. I am a NCDLCN alumna and proud to be part of that group if there's other alumna here. So we're going to really jump right into talking about Google Jamboard, and there's just to clarify, there's really three different kind of instances of Jamboard. So the first one is the one that we're going to focus on, and Carrie put a link in the chat that'll take you to that, is jamboard.google.com, and that's the browser version of Jamboard. And I recommend that you use Chrome if you're able to, but you can use other browsers. Jamboard also is an app that you can run on Chromebooks and that you can run on mobile devices, either iOS or Android. And then lastly, you can see in my virtual background, the sort of red board that's there. There is a physical version of the Jamboard that is a digital whiteboard. They're about $5,000. So we're not going to be focusing on that version of Jamboard. We're going to focus on the browser version, but there are slightly different features available in those three different ways that you can access Jamboard. So just keep that in mind. And I'll refer to some of the differences as we're going through the presentation, so you know sort of what to expect for the different ways that you might interact with it. So I'm going to jump right into a Jamboard. So you can, if you have a browser window, you can type in that URL or click on the link in the chat. You also, if you are in Chrome or have a Google window open, if you go to that sort of tic-tac-toe menu, you can scroll down and you'll find Jamboard on that list there too. So it's not in sort of the top tier of Google applications, but it is available through that tic-tac-toe menu. So when you go to jamboard.google.com, it'll bring up all of the jams that you have. And you may not have any if you haven't created any before or haven't had anybody share one with you before. But to create a new one, you use the plus in the bottom right-hand corner. And if you want to click that plus and sort of follow along as we try out some of the tools, that might be helpful if you're sort of a hands-on learner. So in Jamboard parlance, this page is called a frame. And you can have many pages or frames in a single Jamboard. And I'm actually going to switch over to a Jamboard that I have already created and has many pages in it. You can see up here that I have 11 frames currently in this jam. So let's explore the tools a little bit. You see on the left-hand side, the toolbar. Of course, you have a way to write, sort of digital ink, and that's me writing with my mouse. I happen to have a touch screen, so I can write better using a touch screen. And if you have the mobile version, it's easier, right, to draw with a stylus or your hand than it is with a mouse. But you have, using that tool, you have 4 different kinds of writing implements that you can use. And you also have 6 different choices of colors that you can use with the writing tool. The next tool down is the eraser, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You can also get rid of ink by using clear frame in the menu, but just be aware that if you have other objects on your frame or your page, when you clear the frame, it'll get rid of those in addition to getting rid of your ink. So sticky notes are one of the ways that you can add content to your jam. And you can type your text right there in the colored bar. You have a choice of 5 colors, or you can make your sticky note transparent, which makes it sort of similar to a text box. And this tool is available in all the versions of Jamboard. Now, the sticky note becomes an object when you add it, and that means that you can rotate it, you can resize it, and you also have this menu. I'm going to undo. You also have a menu where you can edit or duplicate if you wanted to make multiple text boxes that were the same size. You can do that quickly using the duplicate option under the 3 dots. So the next tool down is add image, and this allows you to do, you can do, as you see, I was doing a Google image search for Star Wars Day, May the 4th be with you, and then you can select one of these images and insert it right into the jam. You also have other options for how to add images to this Jamboard. And anybody who's editing the Jamboard can add images to it, anybody that you've given access rights to edit. And this is an object, as images are objects as well, so you can rotate, resize, and delete them. And you can also change the order. So you can see here, if I move this image over the text that I have, and my text is black, so it's going to be hard to see. But I can change that order. So if I send this to the back, you see that my text is overlaying that image right now. So the objects are in layers on the Jamboard. And this select tool lets you move them around, and then the 3 dots lets you edit the order that the objects are in. So the next tool is the shape tool. So there are 8 different shapes you can choose from, and you can make them as big or as small as you want. You can choose from the 6 colors for your border, and also 6 colors plus transparent for your fill. Again, I'm going to move this to the back so that you can see my text. So as you see, I'm sort of building a graphic organizer here with the tools that are built into Jamboard. And you can do that, but you're a little limited in the functionality you have. Oh, I forgot to talk about the text box. So for example, so the text box tool is one of the features that's only available in the browser. So if you were using the app or the physical Jamboard, the text box tool isn't there because, well, whatever decisions they've made, it is not there. But you can select with the text tool, you can choose different text colors, and you can choose different text sizes. It'll default to whatever one you used most recently, but you do have a few choices in the size of text that you can add to your Jam using the text tool. So as I was starting to say before I did the text box, you can sort of build a graphic organizer with the Jamboard. So you could ask students now, okay, students, why don't you add some sticky notes to this to let me know what you know about Jamboards, what you want to learn about Jamboards. And they're able, if you've given them edit rights to the board, they can add those things to the board. However, as you just saw, Carrie has edit rights to this board, and she was able to delete the rectangle that I had created because it's an object in this board. So I could go back. I'm happy to say that Jamboard now has, again, a version history. So if I go to the three dots up in the top menu and I go to see version history, I could see who added the poop sticky note to my Jamboard. And I could also go back to the earlier version I had of the Jamboard that was before the rectangle got deleted. However, when I do that, I would also be going back to, give it a second to load. I would also be going back to before that other sticky note was loaded or was added. So it's not a great way to manage your graphic organizer because you would be erasing things that students potentially had added. So there's another way that you can sort of create your graphic organizer in Jamboard. So I'm going to expand the frame bar here. So I'm going up to that place where you can see how many frames you have. And I'm going to expand the bar and I'm going to add another frame. So it'll add a blank frame. I'm going to collapse the frame bar so I get my full view again. So now I'm on a blank frame or blank page, and I'm going to use this option called Set Background. So Google Jamboard has provided me with some backgrounds, but they're pretty limited. But I do have this option here to add an image. So if I click Add Image, I now have the same kind of choices that I had to add an image to the board itself, but this is going to be the board's background and it won't be floating and people won't be able to move it or accidentally delete it. So I'm going to upload from my computer a graphic organizer template that I created. So now that's in the background and I can't accidentally delete it. And anything I add goes on top of that background, floats on top of it. And I don't even have to worry about the issue of things being behind my graphic organizer and changing the order of those objects. So that is really a game changer for Jamboard because it means that you can get a lot of the organizing of the Jamboard done ahead of time, right? And you can upload it as a background and not have to worry about your students accidentally deleting parts of your background. So I'm going to show you a couple other ideas of potential activities that you could do in Jamboard. Some of these are ones that Carrie and I have designed, and some are ones that we've found. So I've used something similar to this in a class, but I didn't design this particular one, but I like it a lot. So the idea here is that ahead of time, you as the teacher create sticky notes for all of your students' names And as the students come into class, they can do a check-in just by moving their sticky note to how they're feeling that day. And you are also taking attendance because you have sticky notes for all of your students. So anybody who's left down in that white space at the bottom, you know, is somebody who is not in class today. So this is an example of something that you might use with a whole group activity. And this is another whole group idea that we used a template that we got from Ditch That Textbook, but we actually did this activity with a group of students. So they're able to use the drawing tool as their kind of we used it as a takeaway at the end of class. What was the big idea that you got from class today? And the trick to this one is using the magnifying or the zoom tool. So if you zoom in to like 200%, and then you scroll over to an empty square, it's a lot easier to draw in that space than when you're zoomed out to be able to see everybody's. But the great thing about having that zoom out view is that the students and you get a picture of what everybody's takeaway is all at once. So that's what I love about this particular template. So this template is one that you might use in a small group instead of a whole group. So you might share the whole jam with the whole class, but then you could make duplicates of this particular jam, right? I could make as many copies of this page or frame as I wanted to let students be able to contribute. And then as the teacher, I can move between all of the different frames easily and monitor what students are doing in a small group, like in a breakout room or even in person, and be able to quickly move between the different pages that students are working on. So here's another example that has an image added, and students are able to edit the sticky notes to be able to contribute their ideas. One of the ways that we've really loved using Jamboard is in breakout rooms. And really this would work for in class too, is I create the template as a background, but then I add on the top a text box that lets each group know which frame is supposed to be for them. So when I duplicate this jam, it'll duplicate the text box and I can edit it for each of the different groups so they know which one they're supposed to be working in. So you could make your background organizer as detailed and text heavy as you want, or make it more image focused, just depending on the needs of your students and the particular application. So this one I think is really more an example of what you would use with individuals, where each individual has their own page that they're working on, because it would get pretty busy pretty fast having all the students contribute to this same jam and marking up this image. But it's nice to think about different applications for small group or whole group, but this ability to annotate a photo or a diagram or a map or even text is a great way to be able to use the drawing features of Jamboard, which is one of the things that it does really well. So Carrie is going to put in or has already put in the chat a link to a Wakelet that has a ton of other templates that you might be interested in using depending on your content area and grade level. There have been people coming up with great ideas all over the country of how to use Jamboard in the past year, I think especially. So we've talked about the way to build your Jamboard, some tips for how to make those templates or those pages so that students can interact with them, but not accidentally delete the things that you want to be permanent or kind of glued to the background. We haven't talked about how you get this Jamboard in the hands of your student. So the simplest way is to use the share button, which is familiar to us from all our different Google applications. You do need to give students the rights to edit the jam if you want them to contribute to it. So one of the best practices that we use is we create a Jamboard to use in a class, and then we immediately make a copy and save it for ourselves as a template so that that sort of clean, unadulterated version is available for us to be able to use or be able to make copies of if we needed to have an additional copy real quick. So if you were having the whole class participate in the same jam, you could just share the link with them that you get right here. But if you wanted to have each student have their own copy of it, you could use that trick where you delete the last part of the link, including the edit word, but stop at the slash and add copy. And then it'll force them to make a copy of that jam, and then each individual student would have their own copy of the jam. Another way that you could do that same thing, if you're using Google Classroom, you can, I'm in the classwork part of this Google Classroom. If I create an assignment, I can add a Jamboard as an attachment to that assignment. And Google Drive, interestingly, right now, does not have a way to search just for jams using file type, but there is kind of a cheat to be able to get to all of your jams. You can do type : and jam, and then it'll bring up all of your Jamboard files. And then you can attach the one that you want to attach to that particular class. And you have the choice, as you do with other kinds of Google files that you attach in Google Classroom. If you just want it to give it to students as a reference, they would just view it. If you want all of the students to edit the same jam, you would want students can edit file. But if you want them working in their own, you do have the option there to make a copy for each student. One other way that you can get your students to Jamboard, so that's Google Classroom that we just looked at. If you use Google Meet instead of Zoom in your district, Jamboard is integrated to some extent with Google Meet, and you can, from within the Google Meet, if you click those three dots that the blue arrow is pointing to, and you select Whiteboard, open a jam, it'll open this sidebar that I have showing, and you can either start a new jam or you can choose a jam that you already created, and it'll automatically share it with everybody who is in that Google Meet with you. So you don't have to sort of manage the sharing part of things if you provide it within the Google Meet. So, so the template or the background that I uploaded to make the background of my that first graphic organizer was really just a Google slide. I tend to build my backgrounds in Google Slides because I have more font choices, more color choices, more control of how I want to design it. And then I can just download that one particular slide as a PNG or a JPEG. And then that is the file that I use to upload as my background. So we've included some of the Google Slides that I use to make the backgrounds in this Jamboard in the slide deck so that you can use those yourself. One of the kind of tricky things about Jamboard is you can, so within a jam, I can copy particular elements in that jam and paste them to another page in that jam, but I can't, let me get back to, so I can copy this. So I can't right click and copy, but I can just do Control C or Command C and copy. And then I could go to another page and I can do Command or Control V to paste it. But I can't do that between Jamboard files. So that only works within a particular jam. So saving images from Google Slides is a little more, to me, a more efficient way to get elements that you want to be able to put into different jams. So, so that's why I've shared those Google Slide versions of those backgrounds with you so that you can easily use those if you would like to, and you can actually edit the elements in them and change the text. So I've summarized some of the tips and tricks that we talked about during this session, and there's one, the hold shift while using the draw tool that I forgot to tell you, but is one of my favorites because it's really hard to make a straight line with the draw tool, but that little trick is wonderful. And then we have a large number of different resources to share for you, because this was, as Emmy said, this was just a bite-sized session. We wanted you to have some additional resources to dive into Jamboard in more depth if you want more ideas, content, and suggestions. So with that, I will open it up for questions and see what ideas you would like to share and what questions you might have. While you're thinking, I'll plug just one more tip that I didn't realize until I was doing research for the session, and that is that Google Drive, although it doesn't give you the choice to search for Jamboards, and you can do that trick to the type :jam, it does, when Google Drive it does search your drive for jams, and when it does, it also searches the content of sticky notes and text boxes that are in your jams. So if you can't remember what you call the jam, but you remember something that was on a sticky note in the jam, you can search for that, which is really handy. I have so many jams now that sometimes I can't find the one I want without being able to search that way.
Laura, it's Jean. Can I just add on just one thing to what you were saying about the Google Drive? There is where you can just click on the Jamboard app and it'll bring up all of your Jamboards that way. And you just can click on owned by me or shared with me. So you have the different drop-down menu as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura and Carrie, for joining us today.